Now we want to get the latest updates from the head of the St. Louis Metropolitan Pandemic Task Force. Dr. Garza is also Chief Medical Officer for SSM Health, joining us live this afternoon. And Dr. Garza, will jump right in here. Today we saw both the city and the county give out reaction to that dramatic increase in cases. In your opinion, is this going to be enough to keep cases from increasing, or do you think more drastic measures need to be taken in the coming weeks?
Well, it's still too early to tell. I'm really hopeful that this will be the extent of restrictions that'll have to be imposed to get cases down. You know, if you think about the different measures that were put in place with the mandatory masking, that should have an impact. And then these other measures that were put in place to really decrease the environment where spread can happen easily, particularly amongst that population where we're seeing that dramatic rise. But it takes time to understand the effects of these, usually anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. But I'm hopeful that combined with all of these measures that we can get those numbers down.
Many people are pointing out that while we are seeing a big increase in cases, they are younger people. Hospitalizations have only gone up slightly, nowhere near the levels we saw just a few months ago. And they also point out that death rates are down as well. So they are asking, are we overreacting in imposing these rollbacks and these restrictions?
Well, these are always, you use the best evidence that you can to make decisions. So the challenge that you always have is that you have to make that decision to reduce those number of cases early on. Because if you wait until you see that high number of hospitalizations or a high number of deaths, you're usually well behind the curve. And so that's what you've seen in other parts of the country like Arizona, Texas, and Florida. By taking those actions now, we're very hopeful that we can start stemming that tide, we can start turning the curve, get hospitalizations down, blunt any deaths, and create that environment that we want in order to reopen schools, go back to sports, all of those things. But you have to make those decisions before you get to really that danger zone.
In about a week now, local schools released their plans for what they expect next month to look like. Pretty wide-ranging, some allowing for 5 days of in-school teaching, as you know, some of them completely virtual. And you have said that every family needs to make decisions best on their own needs, what's best for their family. So are you comfortable, are you supporting the in-school learning even as many teachers groups speak out against it?
Well, it's a tough call. So if you can take those measures to mitigate spread within the school, so social distancing, mask wearing, hand hygiene, not allowing people to congregate in large groups, things like that, and you can control transmission within the community, those two things are key. So you have to be working on both of those. So it's difficult to say where we're going to be in another 3-4 weeks with this community spread. Hopefully with the policy changes today, we can get those numbers down so kids can go back to school. But there's no perfect answer. It's a combination of things that really drive risk for transmission in the school.
And before we let you go this afternoon, we do want to talk about vaccines. They began a 30,000-person phase 3 testing trial today for a vaccine. Give us an idea what you're hearing on vaccines, when we might see one. Yeah, a lot of promise with vaccine coming out. There were 4 candidate vaccines that are going through phase 3 trials right now. It's going to take a little time to complete the trial, crunch the data, come up with some conclusions on whether it's effective or not. And then, of course, then you have to go through production, getting into bottles, getting needles and arms, and that takes a lot of time as well. And so I still think the projections of either very late this year or early next year are probably the most hopeful timelines. I think it'll probably be spring of next year before we'll see significant vaccination occur. Okay, we always like to know the timeline. We like to plan for things like that. Dr. Garza, thank you again for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it. Anytime.